So I think it is about time that we give the diamond the attention and treatment that it deserves with a series all of its own. So in the first part, we're going to be going back to basics. What is diamond? How is it cut from a milky crystal into pure light? You know, Fenny, it was really interesting for me that when we were talking about what episodes to do, that it was over 5 years, as I mentioned in the intro there, that we actually looked at diamond. And before we get into, how it's transformed into the beautiful, sparkly stones that people know today, I think we need to understand a little bit about the material diamond. Like we forget that it actually is a natural material, and its properties are what make it so special at the outset.
As you said, Matthew, we're going back to the basics. Very eager to pick your brain today and learn as much as I can. Diamonds, we see them every day in jewellery downstairs. Beautiful, sparkly stones. Sometimes we forget where they come from or how they actually transform into this beautiful piece of jewellery that we have in front of us. Diamonds, one of the hardest substance on Earth, formed in the depths of the Earth during billions of years under immense pressure and heat. In their natural form, they're quite cloudy, as you mentioned. They look more like fragments of glass or like pebbles almost.
And they are formed from pure carbon, right? They are 100% carbon. But carbon can form in different ways, and one of the important properties of diamond, Fenny, is that they form with a covalent bond, right? Now, I'm not a physicist now or anything like that, right? But ultimately, what it means is that the diamond atoms connect in more ways than just a normal gemstone. They've got a 3 structure. It looks like little triangles in 3 dimensionals. And that's how the atoms bond. But what that means is that they basically are stronger connected to each other. And the result of this is that it makes a very, very hard stone. And that's why for jewellery, it's so great, right? Because it's durable, right? So like to be an heirloom stone or be a precious stone, they've got to be rare, beautiful, and durable, right? And this is why this covalent bond is so important. Of course, you can get lots of stones that are beautiful and rare, but they're not hard. They're not going to be actually suitable to last generations, right? So they'll never become iconic or folklore because they just don't last. I just think of one example that I remember this client brought it into me there a while ago. We didn't sell it. Actually, the previous owner of Courteville sold this stone. It was an Elizabethan cross. The diamonds are shaped like a Toblerone if you filled in the gaps, right? So it's just like a long triangular kind of thing, right? And it was so crisp. Like I remember this day, the moment I looped it. And just seeing, I was like, whoa, like this is so old. And like the stone is just like so crisp. Anyone who knows anything about gemstones will know when you loop some of the softer stones, even if they're from the 60s or 70s, you can see the abrasions on the facet junctions. This stone didn't have any, and it was Elizabethan. And I was like, whoa, but that hard. It's really important for people to understand just how hard diamond is. You can only scratch a diamond with another diamond because they're so hard. Now, diamonds are also very tough, but toughness and hardness is not the same thing. Someone gave me a great analogy before of how you understand this, right? Because the hardness is to do with the scratchability, right? Imagine if you get like a chisel and you try to rub it against it, you won't scratch it. It'll just slide across the surface. That's if it's diamond. But if you get a hammer and you hit it, it will shatter, right? Even if it's made of diamond, it'll break. If you imagine that sheet of glass is made of leather, if you use your fingernail, you'll be able to scratch it and leave a mark. But if you get a hammer and start beating the leather, you're not going to break it, right? That's because it's really tough. Diamond is both of these things, which makes it so perfect for jewellery.
Diamond comes from the Greek word adamas, they say in most of books. I will say as a native Greek speaker that The diamond comes from the Greek suffix alpha, a, and the verb damazo, which is to conquer. As you know, Matthew, because like many Greek words are being used in English today, when you have the suffix alpha, a, at the beginning of a word, what follows is negated. So a means without or not. That's why we have words like anarchy, without order, atheist, without God, things like that. So Adamas means the one who cannot be conquered. And I feel that it's very, it could be very descriptive, but it's also very nice metaphorically if you think about it. It's a direct allusion to the ability of the diamond not to, like, you can scratch it. It's very difficult to break it, as you said. Not impossible, but like difficult. So yeah, a name that perfectly describes the material itself.
So like, even I suppose in ancient Greece, and they would have realized that the properties of the stone are quite special. When you find diamonds in the wild, they can be found in kind of two ways. There's two types of deposits. There's alluvial deposits, which are the ones that they find in water, right? And that is how originally people believed that all diamonds came from water, right? And, you know, my dad even says it sometimes. He's dealing in stones, in diamonds a long time. He said diamonds of the first water.
Diamonds of the first water. Okay.
Yeah, and he just means these very early, watery looking diamonds.
Very pure looking.
The reason they look kind of pebbly at the outset is that they're moving through these rivers, right? Bashing up against other diamonds in the river and stones. And so they get this kind of rougher texture on the outside. When they're found, they're polished and they're removed to reveal the beauty, like the light inside. But that is why they originally look like that. It's also very important to realize how you can identify a diamond by this outer skin, right? They have these particular shapes called trigons, which is like, looks like little triangles and it's the crystal structure of the diamond. But if you find a rough diamond, you will see what looks like little triangular kind of, they're not indented. They actually sit proud on it, but they're very subtle, right? You need a loop and you need to really know what you're looking for. But these trigons on the outer skin of a diamond is what lets you know that it actually is diamond. Sometimes with diamonds, when they actually polish them, they actually leave a couple of these trigons around the girdle. Maybe it's just on the pavilion or just on the crown, but they actually leave one or two of these so you can identify the polished stone as diamond. And I've had many times that we have these naturals, what are called naturals around the girdle, and people say, "Oh, what's that?" And I say, that's actually the natural skin of the diamond. Like that was what is actually on the outside. These trigons, and it looks like, and people do leave them there. So that's one thing to look out for. Look, you can't talk about diamonds, Fenia, without talking about the 4 C's, right? And we're going to give a real insight. If you've ever been shopping for a diamond, if you've ever, watched programs about big diamond discoveries, you'll hear the terms that are used to describe diamonds, right? They are color, clarity, carat, weight, and cut, right? These 4 C's are not the only way to categorize diamonds, but they're a kind of a shorthand that you can communicate the properties of a diamond to somebody and they'll understand what it is. Like diamond language. And they didn't always. There used to be old diamond gradings that had like A, B, B plus, C, all this kind of stuff. And there was other ones that they call them like, river diamonds, Cape diamonds, Wesselton diamonds. Like there's all these old diamond categorizations. And even if you go to lots of different laboratories today, there's slightly different versions of the 4 C's, and some labs actually just use completely different terminology altogether. I know some of the old German labs, they'll have the 4 C's, but they'll put beside it river, water diamond, river diamond, Wesselton, and Cape stones. Like they'll actually use these old terminologies. But the 4 C's today is the generally accepted one, created by the GIA, etc., right? But let's just talk about them, right? We'll give a quick overview of the other 3 before we get into cut, right? Color is, when you're talking about diamonds, color is the absence of color. So a D color stone, and it goes from D to Z. D the most white, Z quite tinted, right? And if you go beyond Z, you get into fancy colored diamonds, like yellows, pinks, blues, all these different ones, right? D is completely absence of color. D to F is considered colorless. G to J, near colorless, right? Then you got KLM, faint tint, and so on till you get to Z, which would be a very tinted stone. The diamond has to be upside down. So you look through the pavilion. The pavilion is the pointy bit at the bottom. You look through the pavilion to grade color. That's how it's done. And in laboratories, they're always unmounted. Now, for us in the antiques business, we grade diamonds. We have to grade them in the mount, right? Which is very difficult. But we get kind of good at it, actually, in a way. But it's we actually might find it difficult to grade them if they're unmounted, right? Because we're so used to doing them in the mount. But color is one of the 4 C's, and that's what they're talking about, the body color of the stone. They're not talking about marks in the stone. They're not talking about carat weight. They're talking about what is the actual hue of the stone. And D is the most white, and it goes right down to Z. The kind of mood around color has changed, though, in the diamond market. When I started in the business, like, everyone was talking like D and F color stones, or G, even G. Some people consider G colorless, but that's what it was. Like, that's where the market was. Anything below that, people weren't, it was considered commercial grade. In my family business, they always used to say to me, put all the 1 carat Ds in the front of the window. That was where the market was. 1 carat Ds, 1 carat Ds, 1 carat Ds, right? VS stones. In Ireland, anyway, it could be different in different markets, right? But the market's evolved, right?
I've noticed that with our clients these days, like as you said, like the absence of color is considered traditionally, technically the most desirable attribute when we're not talking about fancy colored diamonds. But like we have so many clients who come to the store and they're like, I really like that yellow tinted stone because I think it's warmer and friendlier, and so. We do have, as far as I understand it, you are the gemstone expert. I'm more I'm specializing more in art and history. But like from how I understand it, we have some parameters that we take into consideration when we're valuing gemstones, but they don't necessarily have to be the rule for you as a consumer when it comes to like purchasing something you love. Like you have to like it yourself, and at the end of the day, what the experts say is what the experts say, but like you also need to trust your own intuition and your own taste.
While we're explaining these gradings, you don't want to get bogged down in them. They're a way to make sure you get what you pay for, but you have to buy the stones that you really love. And I think you summed it up perfectly. And I can definitely see a trend towards these warmer tones. Now, even within that, though, you can get light yellows, really light yellows that are not fancy, but they're really beautiful warm stones, and you get like a dirtier color, and someone might like it, but they mightn't be as attractive to my eye. And you really have to observe the color yourself in daylight and natural light. In daylight and natural light are the same thing. Daylight and in artificial light, to assess whether you really like that stone. You do that with any gemstone or diamond, actually, anyway.
All right, so from your overview, I understand, I have a better understanding of color now. What about clarity, though? So what would you say clarity is?
Clarity is when you look at a stone, sometimes what you'll see is that, there's little marks in the stone, right? These are called clarity characteristics or inclusions, right? The thing about it is diamonds form around other diamonds, right? And sometimes you get little diamond crystals that actually get stuck in the middle of a bigger diamond. Sometimes you can get graphite inclusions that are in them. And it's these little marks in the stone which are actually affect your clarity. Now, the reason it's important is that if you have too many of these, the light is not going to pass through it, right? So, when you look at the stone, you'll actually see that there's these little inclusions in it. And again, maybe some people like these inclusions, but generally speaking, it'll affect the performance of the stone. And if you have too many of them, it'll actually affect the stability of the stone. Because obviously, diamond covalent bond, very strong, but if you have lots of these inclusions, too many going through it, it'll actually create weaknesses in that covalent bond, right? So, because it's not diamond. So that's your clarity. This is the one that goes from, and I hear it in lots of songs and stuff, VS diamonds, that was terrible, but they go from I diamonds, the letter I, which is I1, 2, 3, they're the subgrades. That means you can see the inclusions with your naked eye, right? Then you've got SI1, SI2. So it's SI is the grade, SI1 and 2 are the subgrades. This means basically that there's inclusions in it, and if you use a loop, you'll be able to see them pretty clearly. Then you've got your VS diamonds. VS, very good grade. And sorry, SI can be a very good grade as well, right? But VS will be very clear. Even if you use the loop at 10x magnification, you'll struggle to see anything unless you're very trained. VVS means, virtually flawless. If you're trained and you use a loop, you'll absolutely struggle to see them. You probably need a microscope to really map out the inclusions in that stone. And then flawless, well, flawless is flawless. Doesn't actually mean flawless under any magnification. If you go close enough, you'll still see inclusions in flawless diamonds, but they're so minute, they basically aren't there, right? And they split internally flawless and flawless. If you look at a GIA diamond grade report, you'll see internally flawless and flawless. The only difference really being is that some diamonds have these such microscopic surface kind of abrasions and stuff that people used to repolish them to get a flawless grade, but GIA realized that it's kind of wasteful doing this, so they gave the internally flawless, which was a slightly subgrade, so you didn't have to repolish it to get the flawless grade, right? So that's the only reason. But I mean, an IF stone, it's flawless. You'll see in other labs, they'll call it LC, loop clean, eye clean, words like that, but it means flawless.
How rare is it to find a flawless diamond? Is it true that many jewelers won't be able to see a flawless diamond in their life most of the times?
Yeah, pretty true. The bigger, the rarer. And that's another very important topic. The material diamond is not rare, but gem quality big ones that are high grade are rare. If you had a flawless diamond over a carat, that's a pretty rare stone. If you have one over 5 carats, it's an absolutely, once in a lifetime stone.
Talking about carats, I assume that the third C in our list is quite self-explanatory. We're talking about size, right?
Almost. We're talking about weight. So a carat is 1/5 of a gram, and it comes from seeds in South America. These seeds typically always have the same weight. So they were the point of reference, this carat seed. So they could, if you could say you transported something from, a diamond from one part of Brazil to another, if you got this seed in that part, you could weigh it and you could use it as a point of reference. So that's where it comes from. It's 1/5 of a gram. And it talks about weight. So of course the weight relates to the size, but you can have shallow stones, you can have deep stones. So it's not a fine science, but it is. If you took a stone and put it on a very sensitive scales, you would get the carat weight. And that's what carat is.
I see. Okay. Do you know the etymology of the word carat, Matthew? I have been trying to figure out myself, and I did some research, and there is a particular plant in Greece. When I was growing up, I used to play with my friends, and we would gather the fruits of this plant, and we would play house. It looks like a horn, and it has tiny circular seeds inside it, the fruit, and apparently traders would take the seeds from this plant and use the two in scales to basically measure the weight of the diamonds. This plant, this fruit, looks like a horn. It has the shape of a horn, and in Greek, horn translates as kerato or keratio, And maybe there is a connection between carrot and the fact that these seeds that were used to measure the weight of diamonds back in the day in the Mediterranean region, these seeds are in a fruit that has the shape of a horn. I could be mistaken, but I find it very interesting.
That sounds really interesting. So you actually played with them?
Yeah, they're everywhere. They're everywhere in the Mediterranean region, of course, in Greece as well. And yeah, I remember that we had lots of trees that bore this fruit while I was growing up in my neighborhood as a child.
Wow. And I mean that does relate to once you get the carrot weight from these trees that you're talking about, that leads on to the cut, and the cut is the only human factor that humans are actually involved in the diamond process. Venya, when we're talking about, these pebbles that they found in these alluvial deposits, and later in kimberlite pipes and in South Africa, they discovered that you can actually mine for a diamond, but how they transform them from these stones into these really beautiful stones and beautiful jewels is really down to the cut, right? How they're cut. So the cut of a diamond is how it is actually fashioned into these stones, right? And how well it's done. The shape is something a little bit different. The shape is the result of how you cut it, right? But the cut is actually the process of turning the stone from a raw crystal into a polished diamond. There's a few things to consider, right? So first of all, carat weight, right? They want to maintain kind of as much carat weight as possible, right? If a rough crystal is 4 carats, you're going to want to keep it, at least over 2. And typically with diamonds, you can lose anywhere, depending on the shape, your yield can be anywhere from like 30 to 70%, right? So that's one factor. The other is if there's marks in the stone, you want to kind of either eliminate them or minimize them. You want to cut it then in a way that maximizes the color. So there's all these factors, right? But in conjunction with that, the cut is trying to maximize the brilliance of the stone, the fire of the stone. So it does fire and brilliance culminate into sparkle. So you're balancing up these technical factors with the cut, maximizing the performance of the stone, being economical about the weight of the stone. And at the end of the day, there's a commercial aspect to it. Certainly today, anyway, and it was different with antique stones. It was really cutting for maximum beauty, visual beauty. But today with stones, it's what way can we polish this rough crystal to maximize value? And it's quite scientific. Like, I've actually seen how they do this. They can scan these rough crystals and they can actually see, and they can get different permutations. I can get a round stone here and an emerald cut there and this and that. And they can figure out exactly what grades they'll be and what the subsequent value of those stones are. So it's quite interesting. But the cut is the only one of the 4 C's, right, which is done by man, right? It's the only one that's human intervention. The color, the clarity, the carat weight, they come from the stone, right? You can't change the color of the diamond and keep it natural, right? You can't increase the size of a rough crystal. And so the cut is the blend of the skill of human hand, taking these incredibly hard miracles of nature, and they are miracles, really, and it combines them to form these beautiful stones.
I think that I really like the idea. I think that it's very poetic in a way. The fact that the end result of the whole diamond processing of putting a diamond onto a piece of jewelry is like a collaboration between man and nature. If you think about it, nature creates this wonderful substance, one of the hardest, with the potential to become so sparkly and so beautiful. But it's like human intervention, skill and craftsmanship that actually brings that rough, humble-looking crystal to the glorious material that we have at the end.
How does this cutting process actually work? Okay, the first step, Fanny, you might talk about is the planning.
And by the way, I need to mention that at some point Matthew took us to a polishing course. So I've had like actual experience from the whole process myself, and I have to tell you, it's a very difficult one, and it made me like appreciate more the people who actually are involved in the process of creating those beautiful stones. The teachers gave us a lab-grown stone to polish. You usually start with lab-grown stones when you start learning, because you don't want to waste valuable material.
And this was lab grown sapphire, so it was diamond couldn't even more difficult, right? You'd imagine. But yeah, and what happened, Fenya? I can't remember exactly.
So I started polishing this stone, and I did it so unevenly that the teacher decided that we need to throw it away completely, and he gave me a new stone to start from the beginning. But anyways, the first part of the cutting process, as Matthew said, is planning, and this involves a specialist who inspects the rough diamond, trying to figure out the best way to cut it, to divide it, in order to save in material and in order to have like a final product that performs in the best possible way, light-wise, like interacts with light in the best way possible.
You know, this is like the modern process, right? There's different elements of this used in history, and in this series we'll talk about historical, but this is really like a modern diamond process, right? So yeah, you plan it, they get the 3D scan, and they can plan what way they actually want to do it, right? The first step after that then is they got to actually divide this stone up into the different pieces, right? If you imagine two pyramids stuck at the bases, yeah, that's your typical shape of a rough diamond. And then they have to actually make this initial cut, right? It's called cleaving, right? Can be done with the laser. Today, historically, was done with basically a big, what looked like a kind of a machete, more or less. The thing about this is you have to remember, diamonds have basically like a grain, right? If you imagine it's a piece of wood, they have to do this cleaving across the natural planes of this stone, or else it won't work right, okay?
I see. So you're saying that basically you can break a diamond, you can cleave a diamond, but you have to apply force into a particular like part of the stone. Otherwise it won't break.
It won't break, or it won't break cleanly. And then you won't get the plan that you had. You obviously won't be able to do it then, okay? So like there's very famous stories about, you know, Harry Winston did the cleaving of a diamond live on TV, I believe, and like apparently the guy doing it like fainted because it's the pressure, right? Because, you know, that would be a high risk step in the diamond cutting process for sure. So once they've got this broad outline, right, they've got this broad shape, they have to then get it like a rough outline of it, right? They do this with bruting, okay? Bruting is creating the basic shape and the girdle, right? So the girdle is the circumference of the diamond, right? And bruting, you should definitely Google bruting a diamond. It's so cool. It's got two diamonds. They're both spinning on like these spinning kind of needles, and then they rub each other. And remember what we were saying? The only thing that can polish a diamond is another diamond. So these spinning diamonds brute each other, and that gives them these polished girdles, these circular. It's now got a circular shape typically, right? And if you look at the girdle of a diamond, it's one way that I like to identify older diamonds. It'll have a bruted girdle, and that is, it looks kind of like sandpaper. It looks kind of frosty, right? If you look at a modern diamond, it's going to have faceted girdle. These older ones have bruted girdles, right? Again, traditionally done diamond on diamond, mechanized in the 19th century, but was done, you know, by hand using energy before that, right? So now you've gone from rough crystal, we've cleaved it into kind of broad shapes, we've bruted it into kind of the outline of a diamond. Now we got to get it sparkly, right? This is your faceting and polishing, right? Or your brillianteering. This is where the magic happens, Fenya, right? This is where they actually polish and get the angles for each facet, which will determine the performance, the brilliance, the fire and the brilliance of this diamond. This is pretty much still done by hand, right? And if you ever look at a video of someone polishing a diamond, and they kind of put it on a spinning wheel and they look at the diamond and it's in this little machine and they put it back on the wheel, that's brillianteering. This is getting the angles right. This is getting the proportions done in such a way that the diamond will perform very well. The polish the table first. The table is the top of the stone, right? If you imagine the stone, if you were to put something on a diamond, it would be on the top, right? That's the table. And then they do the other 57 facets. That's for a modern, brilliant, round, brilliant stone. Those 57 facets. You got the table, you got crown facets, you got pavilion facets, you got, they don't count the girdle facets in this now, right? Star facets. But the difference with an old European, and we can talk about the difference of this in this series as well, is that the culet will be polished, right? That's your 58th facet. But your modern round's a 57. Like, and I just want to emphasize, like, this final stage is, in my opinion, artisan. Like, it's really, we're not just talking about round brilliance, the brillianteering for all the other shapes. This is where the art and the skill of the diamond polisher, this is where you really see it. And a stone's beauty and performance and life, like the life of the stone, comes from the brillianteering.
And I think that you're very right to highlight the fact that it's art. It's probably a combination of like science, art, craftsmanship, because I think polishers do, when you were cutting a diamond, they take into consideration like the angles of the diamond, the different facets, things like that. So I suppose that mathematics is like heavily involved into the whole process. But it's also aesthetics, so that's where the art part comes from. Personally, I really love the cushions that we have downstairs, the old mine cuts, that do not display this perfect symmetry that modern round brilliants do. And I think that those like imperfect shapes that they have are much more appealing and much friendlier as well.
Could not agree more with you. So, and again, it's just a nuance of the market, maybe. When, you know, modern rounds are very fantastic performers. It's not that we're knocking modern rounds. I don't want anyone to think that. They're beautiful stones. They're a testament to mathematics, craftsmanship, creativity, and execution. But I think the more I look at them, they're slightly more nuanced stones. And I remember I was in a diamond shop the other day. I was looking at the tray. They had a tray of old cuts. I was looking for a replacement stone for a ring, and I was just looking. There was this incredible diamond that had these. The table of stone was virtually the same size as the whole circumference, and had these really steep crown and star facets, and this tiny pavilion. It was such a really unusual looking stone, but I just thought it was great. And in the right piece, it would have been amazing. So I'm just thinking, like, it really is, to my mind, if there was a line between art and mathematics, this is very firmly on the art side of it.
I think that you're correct. Like, art doesn't necessarily have to exclude mathematics or science. Most of the times, those two disciplines go hand in hand, and this is true when we're talking about diamonds as well. What about the people who actually do this feat? Because it is a feat if you think about it. Like, how do you become a diamond polisher?
If I was really thinking about getting a career in diamond polishing, of course you can be self-taught, but a lot of it is done in Antwerp, India, Amsterdam. I'm sure there's somewhere in the US that does it as well, but it's a long apprenticeship. I know that, very long. You train with sometimes synthetics or whatever to learn. Like, no one's going to let you go at a 5-carat flawless decolored diamond until you're in it. So I mean, apprenticeships can be certainly 5 years plus. I would say probably close to 10 years. We have a running joke in the shop here that our diamond polisher he's actually in his 90s. That's no exaggeration. And he's the apprentice, right? He's the apprentice. We always say, I have to send it the apprentice. His master is only a few years older than him. I think he is retired now.
Do you have to be a gemologist to become an efficient diamond polisher?
Gemologist is more broad. That's about all gemstones and also diamonds. But diamonds, you could just, people tend to specialize in one or the other. A gemologist obviously would understand across the board, but if you're a diamond polisher, that's usually what you do. You don't typically do gemstone polishes then. So you tend to be one or the other. And if you polish gemstones, you tend to not be a diamond cutter. So for example, we have 2 separate people who do our work. So we've got a gem polisher and we've got a diamond cutter. Because diamonds are so hard, the machine, the setup, it's all completely different. Like, I think these guys and girls, like, they need real, like, appreciation because it's high risk, it's difficult, it requires a lot of precision. Like, I mean, look, we've got, like, I have a little stone here in front of me, right? Which is just like a round cut stone, right? So it's got, your bruted girdle, it's got your typical 57 facets. There's a modern one we had, but like to actually produce this, years of precision, it's probably monotonous. Okay, of course it's problem solving because all different diamond shapes and the angles that you have to get and the way the rough crystal is set up, you have to plan it, there's thought to, but you have to be precise in a very repetitive way. And I think that requires a certain mindset. And like, you can't make mistakes. Like, okay, you're not a doctor. It's not life and death, but like
We're talking about lots of money, though, if you
Yeah.
think about it. We're dealing with a valuable material.
Yeah.
So I can understand, like, the guy, you mentioned that a guy fainted when he tried to cleave a stone.
Yes.
I can understand the pressure.
Yeah. And like I say, as a career, I would say at the start, like any apprenticeship, I'd say it's probably fairly entry level in terms of remuneration. But I'd say once you become a master cutter, I'd say it's a good gig. But definitely a challenging one.
Now, Matthew, like, your job requires you to purchase diamonds and other gemstones like multiple times per week, maybe multiple times per day. And as you said, it's very difficult to isolate one of the 4 C's. You have to consider all of them when you're making a purchase. But I find it very difficult to believe that there isn't something that you consider more important than the other ones. Like, definitely some of the 4 C's make one stone more valuable than the others, or is it more complicated than that?
It depends on the stone. Like with an old cushion cut, like you could have an SI2, but the inclusions could be like, it could have a steep crown facet, which is from the table to the girdle. It could be quite steep, so it could be hidden there. And so it would be not really important. But then you could have an emerald cut that's got an SI2 and it's right in the middle, like it's right there. And so it's so important. Old Euros, sometimes warmer old Europeans cuts, I think can be beautiful, like really nice. But I love, like, I really like white emerald cuts or Asher cuts, like really white, like a D color emerald cut in Art Deco setting is amazing. And carat weight is all just relative. Like, it's how the stone is cut. I remember sometimes we get these old diamond clusters, lovely Victorian clusters, and they've got these really heavy, chunky cluster diamonds around it. And it's like, they're so important that they're almost like spherical, but they're just like really chunky. They look great, right? Cut for me really equals performance. Like, how does a stone perform? If it's cut well, it'll perform well. If it's, if the clarity is not too bad, like even there, like it's inextricably linked between the material that nature's provided and how it's executed by a human, right? So I just don't think I could say there's any one. It really depends. It's case by case. What we love, what we deal in, is antique stones, bigger ones, typically over a carat. You have to just assess it, look at it, and assess it on a case by case basis. Unfortunately, there's rules of thumb, but there's no hard and fast rule that you can rely on. You can't say, oh, it has to be above a J colour and above an SI2. I remember I had an I1 stone one time, old Euro, D colour, 160 or 162 D I1. But like, I looked at this stone several times. I was like, this is a VS. And then if you turn it from a certain angle, you can see it had a feathered inclusion that was going across and it got an I1. Some people would say, oh no, don't buy eye stones. But as I said to the client, I said, yes, this is an eye stone. GIA certified I1. Like, but the conclusion is completely invisible. It's just, by the letter of the law, it is an I1, and I if you looked at how the grading is done, it's like, yes, it was an I because of the size of the inclusion, but because of its location, the way it just was a very, very harsh I1. And the labs even differ, so you have to take it on your own merits. Listen to the specialists you're working with. Make sure you trust them, and then go from there. But If you want a quick and easy diamond to buy a modern studded stone that's triple X and cut. It's going to look really great. And I mean that, it's going to look really great. If you're slightly more nuanced and you want to really understand diamond cut, you have to look at lots of stones and then you get to understand what a good one is. My great-grandfather, it was said that he was a fantastic judge of a diamond. And I remember I got a diamond in that he had sold, right? And I was like, whoa, this is a great diamond. If you graded it, it'd probably be like a 1.1 DEVS or VVS. Sure, that was 100 years before diamond grading. Like, he just knew what good stones were. And if you're looking for a nice, unusual diamond with unusual faceting and antique cut, you have to look at that stone on its own merits. If you had to pick between a diamond that was a bit smaller, but like beautifully cut, or a bigger stone but not so well cut, what would you pick?
I think I would pick the smaller one that's very well cut. Personally, like if you've given me an old mine cut and something that it's more modern, I would probably go for the cut that I personally prefer the most. It's a matter of taste at the end of the day, and I think that's it. Like, I prefer the design of a diamond than the size of it. Now, if you talked about clarity and size, I would probably go for size, because I think that sometimes it's very difficult to see the inclusions with a naked eye. I think that sometimes we can be a little bit harsh on our judgment as far as the clarity is concerned. It does matter for us, like for dealers, for jewelry professionals, to value a stone and to assess it. But at the end of the day, if you can really see the inclusions yourself and you need a loop, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it really depends on the C's that I'm considering. Cut, though, for me would be more important than the rest, for sure. I would really like to thank you, Matthew, for today's session, because I know that you're a very busy man, and you must see Matthew when we are downstairs at the store. Clients are coming, he's running all over the place, dealers, you're a very busy man in everyday life. You have your personal life as well. So I'm very excited that I had at least an hour of you to myself, and I could ask you all these questions about diamond cutting. I'm not an expert into this field yet, so I really value the fact that I had your time and I could ask you all these questions today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Fenia. Thank you for joining me today. In the next episode, we'll travel back through history to see how diamonds have moved from sacred objects and talismans to the center of the jewelry world. Make sure you're following Gem Pursuit on your podcast app of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to click subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Thank you, Fenia, for joining me today. Thank you to Veronique for doing the research. Thank you to Ross for putting the episode together. That's Ross of Tape Deck. And thank you to Colin for working on the video for us today. But most of all, thank you to you for joining us. And until the next time, from us at Gem Pursuit, from me, your host, Matthew Weldon, happy hunting.